15 former inmates with tattoos covering their arms stood in the freezing rain outside the Tennessee State Penitentiary when the warden announced that Marcus "Ghost" Williams had 48 hours before his execution. Marcus, with scars telling 12 years of maximum security stories etched into every muscle, gripped the bars of his cell with a strength that came from a very dark place. "I just want to see my daughter one more time," he said, his voice carrying the weight of a man who had accepted his fate. But what the prison system didn't know was that Marcus had been wrongly convicted of a murder he witnessed but didn't commit, and he had spent over a decade protecting the real killer's identity because that killer had saved his blind daughter's life. What happened in the next 2 days shocked the entire state and proved that sometimes the darkest cells hold the brightest souls. This is the story of how one man's final wish became a community's awakening. Have you ever imagined that the person behind bars might know more about justice than the system that put them there? That's exactly what happened with Marcus, and what he discovered in those final hours changed everything. So make sure you subscribe to this channel, leave your like, and stay with me until the end, because what happened in this story, nobody was prepared to see. And trust me, you'll never look at a death row inmate the same way again. Sarah Williams was 9 years old, blind since birth, and sitting in her foster mother's small apartment in Memphis, Tennessee. She couldn't see the rain streaming down the window, but she could hear the desperate sadness in Mrs. Patterson's voice as she explained that Sarah's father, Marcus, was scheduled to die in 2 days. For the past 12 years, Sarah had only known her father through weekly phone calls from prison and the rare supervised visits where she could touch his face and memorize the sound of his heartbeat when he hugged her. She had no memory of the crime, no understanding of why her daddy lived behind walls and spoke to her through glass. All she knew was that every time she heard his voice, she felt safe, and every time the call ended, she felt a piece of herself die. Mrs. Patterson had tried 17 times to get approval for Sarah to visit Marcus one final time, but the prison system denied every request, citing security protocols and the emotional trauma it might cause the child. But Sarah didn't care about protocols. She cared about saying goodbye to the only person who had ever made her feel like she mattered in a world she couldn't see. That's when Mrs. Patterson did something desperate. She posted a message in a local Memphis community group explaining Sarah's situation and begging for help. The message was simple but devastating. A blind 9-year-old girl wants to see her father one last time before the state executes him. The system says no. Is there anyone who can help? Within 6 hours, that message reached a renovated warehouse on Beale Street where the Second Chance Brotherhood met every evening. This was a group of 43 former inmates, each one carrying their own story of redemption, each one knowing exactly what it felt like to be abandoned by a system that claimed to serve justice. James Prophet Thompson, 62 years old, who had served 19 years for armed robbery before finding redemption through a prison education program, read the message aloud to the EI. A group. His voice cracked when he got to the part about Sarah being blind. Prophet had tattoos covering his neck from his gang days, but his eyes held the wisdom of someone who had walked through hell and chosen to come back different. "Brothers," he said, looking at the faces of men who ranged from 28 to 65 years old, "we know what it's like when the system fails the innocent. We know what it's like to be judged before we're heard. This little girl needs us." Carlos Caneta Rodriguez, who had spent 14 years inside for drug trafficking and now ran a successful graphic design business, stood up. His arms were covered with prison tattoos, including a clock with no hands that he'd gotten the day he realized his time inside was meaningless if he didn't change. "I got a van," he said. "I got connections at the prison, and I got nothing to lose by trying." The group voted. 43 hands went up, every single one. They had 72 hours to do what the legal System couldn't do in 12 years. Get Sarah to her father. But first, they needed to understand who Marcus Williams really was and why a man on death row was so desperate to protect someone else's secret. Prophet made the first call to his contact inside the Tennessee State Penitentiary, a guard named Officer Richardson, who had worked there for 23 years and had watched Marcus Williams become the most unusual death row inmate he'd ever supervised. Marcus is different, Richardson told Prophet over the phone. In 12 years, he's never had a disciplinary write-up. He mentors younger inmates. He runs the prayer group. He teaches guys to read. I've seen murderers, rapists, and monsters in this job. Marcus isn't one of them. Prophet asked the question everyone wanted to know. Then why is he on death row? Richardson's silence was heavy. Because he confessed to a murder. Because the evidence fit. Because a jury convicted him. But between you and me, I've read that case. File 50 times. Something doesn't add up. Marcus knows who really killed that man, and he's protecting them. I just don't know why. That's when Carlos used his former connections from his days in the criminal world, not to break the law, but to access public records that most people didn't know how to find. His fingers moved across his laptop keyboard with the same speed they had when he was running fraudulent credit card schemes, but now he was using those skills to uncover the truth. Within 3 hours, he had pulled court transcripts, witness statements, and police reports from Marcus's trial. What he found made everyone in that warehouse go silent. 12 years ago, Marcus Williams had been working as a janitor at a downtown Memphis hotel. A wealthy businessman named Gerald Hutchinson was found stabbed to death in his hotel room. Marcus's fingerprints were on the door handle because he had cleaned that room hours earlier. A bloody knife was found in a dumpster near where Marcus parked his car. 2 witnesses claimed they saw Marcus arguing with Hutchinson in the hotel bar the night before the murder. Marcus confessed during police interrogation, claiming he killed Hutchinson in a moment of rage after Hutchinson refused to pay him money he was owed for extra cleaning work. But here's what didn't make sense. Marcus had no history of violence. The confession was given after 18 hours of interrogation without a lawyer present. The knife had been wiped clean except for a single partial fingerprint that matched Marcus, but forensic experts noted it looked staged. And most importantly, 3 days after Marcus was arrested, his daughter Sarah received an anonymous donation that paid for a life-saving cornea surgery that could have potentially restored some of her vision. The surgery ultimately didn't work, but someone had paid $300,000 for it. Someone who wanted to stay hidden. Someone who Marcus was protecting. Prophet looked at Carlos, then at the rest of the group. Marcus took the fall for someone, and that someone paid for his daughter's surgery as payment. The room exploded with theories. Was it the real killer? Was it someone powerful who framed Marcus? Was it connected to Hutchinson's business dealings? But Prophet raised his hand for silence. It doesn't matter right now. What matters is that little girl deserves to see her father, and we're going to make that happen. The plan was formed. Carlos would use his connections to get them temporary contractor clearance to enter the prison under the guise of doing maintenance work on the chapel, where Marcus spent his final days. Prophet would coordinate with Officer Richardson to arrange a spiritual counseling session that would allow Sarah to be present. DeAndre Poet Jackson, a former gang member who now worked as a paralegal, would file an emergency motion with the governor's office requesting a stay of execution based on new evidence they were still gathering. It was risky, potentially illegal, and absolutely necessary, but they had one major obstacle: getting Sarah there without alerting the foster care system, which would immediately shut down any unauthorized travel. That's where Maria Santos came in. Maria was 54 years old, a former inmate who had served 6 years for accessory to fraud and now ran a non-profit transportation service for families visiting loved ones in prison. She wasn't part of the original brotherhood, but when Prophet called her, she didn't hesitate. "I'll pick up Sarah and Mrs. Patterson tomorrow morning," Maria said. I'll tell the foster system it's an approved therapeutic visit for grief counseling. By the time they figure out where we really went, that little girl will have said goodbye to her daddy. 24 hours before Marcus's execution, a convoy of 3 vehicles left Memphis heading toward the Tennessee State Penitentiary. In the first van rode Carlos, Prophet, and 6 other former inmates, all carrying contractor IDs that Carlos had obtained through a legitimate security company that hired ex-cons. In the second vehicle, Maria drove with Sarah and Mrs. Patterson, the little girl clutching a stuffed bear that Marcus had sent her for her 5th birthday. In the third car, DeAndre and 2 other brothers carried boxes of legal documents ready to present their case to anyone who would listen. Sarah couldn't see the prison when they arrived, but she could feel the heaviness in the air. "Is this where Daddy lives?" she asked, her small voice trembling. Mrs. Patterson squeezed her hand. "Yes, baby, and today you're going to give him the biggest hug of his life." Inside the prison, Marcus Williams sat in his cell, unaware that 43 strangers and his daughter were about to change everything. He had made peace with his death. He had written letters to Sarah that would be delivered after his execution, explaining that he loved her more than his own life, that he had made choices to protect her, and that she should never blame herself for his fate. He had spent 12 years preparing for this moment, believing his sacrifice had given his daughter a chance at medical treatment, even though it hadn't worked. What he didn't know was that the real killer, the person he had protected all these years, was about to make a decision that would shatter everything. Officer Richardson met the group at the prison entrance. His face was tense. "Prophet, this is insane. If we get caught, I lose my job, my pension, everything." Prophet looked at him with eyes that had seen too much injustice to back down now. "And if we don't try, a little girl loses her father without ever understanding why. What would you choose?" Richardson made his choice. He led them through security, using his authority to bypass certain checkpoints, claiming the contractors needed access to the chapel's electrical system and that the grief counselor Maria Santos had been approved for a final family visit. It was a lie built on desperation, but it worked. Marcus was sitting in the prison chapel, his head bowed in prayer, when he heard a voice he thought he'd never hear in person again. "Daddy!" Sarah's voice cut through the silence like light through darkness. Marcus's head snapped up. There, being led by Mrs. Patterson, was his daughter, his Sarah, 9 years old now, so much bigger than the last time he'd held her 3 years ago during a brief approved visit. His hands started shaking. "Sarah? Baby, how are you here?" Sarah ran forward, and Marcus caught her in his arms, falling to his knees so he could hold her at her level. She touched his face with her small hands, memorizing every feature through her fingertips. "Some people came to help us, Daddy. They said you shouldn't be alone." Marcus looked up and saw them, 15 former inmates standing in the chapel doorway, watching this reunion with tears in their eyes, because every single one of them knew what it felt like to lose time with their children. But before Marcus could speak, Prophet stepped forward. "Marcus Williams, my name is James Thompson. We need to talk about why you're really here." Marcus stiffened. "I don't know what you mean." "I confessed. I'm guilty." Prophet shook his head. "You're protecting someone who paid for Sarah's surgery. We know about the $300,000. We know the evidence doesn't match your confession. And we know you're about to die for a crime you didn't commit." Marcus's face went pale. Sarah was still in his arms, unable to see the fear in his eyes, but feeling the tension in his body. "Please," Marcus whispered to Prophet, "don't do this in front of her." Prophet nodded and gestured to Mrs. Patterson, who gently took Sarah to sit in the front pew, distracting her with quiet conversation while the men talked. Marcus stood, his chains rattling as he moved. "You don't understand what you're asking me to do." Carlos stepped forward. "We understand perfectly. You made a deal with the devil to save your daughter. Someone killed Gerald Hutchinson, and they offered you money for Sarah's surgery if you took the fall. What we don't understand is why you're still protecting them when the surgery didn't even work." Marcus closed his eyes, and when he opened them, tears were streaming down his face. Because the person who killed Hutchinson isn't a monster. He's a father who was protecting his own daughter. The chapel went silent. Prophet felt his heart sink. "Explain!" Marcus took a deep breath and told them the truth he'd carried for 12 years. Gerald Hutchinson wasn't just a businessman. He was a predator who had been abusing his assistant's teenage daughter for over a year. The assistant's name was David Chen, a single father who had immigrated from China and was working 3 jobs to support his daughter, Lily. When David discovered what Hutchinson had been doing to 15-year-old Lily, he confronted Hutchinson in that hotel room. The confrontation turned violent. David stabbed Hutchinson in self-defense and panic. Marcus had gone to clean the room early the next morning and found David standing over the body, covered in blood, completely broken. He was going to turn himself in, Marcus said quietly. He was going to confess and leave Lily alone in this country with no family, no support, and the trauma of what Hutchinson did to her. I couldn't let that happen. Prophet's voice was barely a whisper. "So you took the blame." Marcus nodded. "David offered me everything he had, every penny he'd saved, $300,000. I told him to use it for Sarah's surgery. If I was going to die anyway, at least my daughter might have a chance to see. David disappeared with Lily. They changed their names, moved somewhere safe, and I've never regretted it. Not for 1 second." Carlos slammed his fist against the chapel wall. "But the surgery didn't work. You're dying for nothing." Marcus looked at Sarah, who was singing softly to herself in the pew, and his face softened. "Not nothing. Lily got to grow up safe. David got to be there for her, and Sarah got to know her father tried everything to help her. That's not nothing." DeAndre, who had been silent until now, pulled out his phone. "Marcus, if we can find David Chen, if he's willing to come forward and tell the truth, we can stop this execution. The governor can grant a stay. You can get a new trial." Marcus shook his head violently. "No, I won't let you destroy that family. David and Lily deserve their peace." Prophet grabbed Marcus by the shoulders. "And Sarah deserves her father. Look at her, Marcus. She's 9 years old. She needs you. You think sacrificing yourself makes you noble. It makes you absent. David Chen made his choice 12 years ago. Now it's time for you to make yours." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and for the first time in 12 years, he allowed himself to imagine a future where he was alive, where he could hear her graduate from school, walk her down the aisle someday, be the grandfather to children she might have. The weight of his sacrifice suddenly felt less like nobility and more like cowardice. "I don't even know where David is," Marcus whispered. DeAndre smiled. "But I do. I'm a paralegal, remember? I've been tracking unusual name changes and relocations for the past 3 hours. David Chen became Daniel Chin. He lives in Portland, Oregon, with his daughter Lily, who's now 27 years old, and working as a trauma counselor. I have his phone number." 20 minutes later, Daniel Chin answered a call he never expected to receive. When Prophet explained the situation, there was a long silence on the other end. Then Daniel's voice, older but still carrying the weight of that night 12 years ago, said 3 words that changed everything. "I'm coming forward." Daniel explained that he had lived every day of the past 12 years in agony, knowing an innocent man was paying for his actions. He had built a life with Lily, yes, but it was a life haunted by guilt. Lily had healed from her trauma through years of therapy and had even become a counselor to help other survivors. She was strong now, safe now, and she had been begging her father for years to tell the truth. "I was too much of a coward," Daniel said, his voice breaking. "But I won't let Marcus die for me. I'm taking the next flight to Tennessee. I'll confess everything." The next 18 hours were a blur of legal motions, emergency hearings, and media coverage. DeAndre and his legal team filed for an immediate stay of execution based on new witness testimony. Daniel Chin arrived in Tennessee and walked into the governor's office with his lawyer, ready to confess to the killing of Gerald Hutchinson and provide evidence of Hutchinson's abuse of his daughter. The story exploded across national news. Man on death row saved, child predators victim, sacrificed own freedom. Governor Linda Marshall had no choice but to grant a stay of execution pending a full investigation. Marcus Williams's execution was halted with 6 hours to spare. 3 months later, after a comprehensive review of the evidence, Marcus Williams was exonerated. Daniel Chen was charged with voluntary manslaughter, and given the circumstances of defending his daughter from a predator, he received a sentence of 8 years with the possibility of parole in 4. Lily Chen testified at his trial, publicly sharing her story of abuse and healing and advocating for her father's lenient sentence. The courtroom wept as she explained that both her father and Marcus Williams were heroes who had protected her when the system failed. On the day Marcus walked out of Tennessee State Penitentiary as a free man, 43 former inmates from the Second Chance Brotherhood were waiting for him. Sarah ran into his arms, and this time, when she touched his face, he wasn't wearing chains. Prophet stood next to Marcus and said, "You've got a job waiting for you at the Brotherhood. We help other families navigate the system, fight for the wrongly convicted, and support kids who have parents inside. You interested?" Marcus looked at his daughter, at the men who had saved his life, and at the second chance he never thought he'd receive. "When do I start?" Today, Marcus Williams is 52 years old and works as the director of the Second Chance Brotherhood's Wrongful Conviction Division. He has helped exonerate 7 other inmates and has reunited 43 families. Sarah is now 17 years old, still blind but thriving in school, and she volunteers at the Brotherhood every weekend, sharing her story of hope. Daniel and Lily Chen served their time and now work together running a non-profit that helps survivors of abuse. The 4 of them, Marcus, Sarah, Daniel, and Lily, have become a family bonded not by blood, but by sacrifice, redemption, and the belief that the system doesn't define. Marcus looked at his daughter, at the men who had saved his life, and at the second chance he never thought he'd receive. When do I start? Today, Marcus Williams is 52 years old and works as the director of the Second Chance Brotherhood's Wrongful Conviction Division. He has helped exonerate 7 other inmates and has reunited 43 families. Sarah is now 17 years old, still blind, but thriving in school, and she volunteers at the Brotherhood every weekend, sharing her story of hope. Daniel and Lily Chen served their time and now work together, running a non-profit that helps survivors of abuse. The 4 of them, Marcus, Sarah, Daniel, and Lily, have become a family bonded not by blood, but by sacrifice, redemption, and the belief that the system doesn't define justice, people do. And this story proves something powerful, that sometimes the greatest act of love looks like sacrifice, but the greatest act of courage is accepting that you deserve to live. Marcus spent 12 years believing his death would save others, but 43 former inmates taught him that his life could save so many more. So now I ask you, do you believe people can be redeemed? Do you believe the system always gets it right? Leave your like if this story touched your heart. Comment below what moment impacted you most. Was it when Sarah touched her father's face? When Daniel decided to come forward? When the Brotherhood refused to give up? Share this story with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late for truth, and subscribe. Because stories like this remind us that humanity isn't found in perfection. It's found in the courage to do what's right, even when everything says it's too late. Write in the comments, redemption is possible, and tell me where you're watching from. This story reached Tennessee, but I want to know how far hope can travel, from one father's sacrifice to a community's courage to a nation's awakening. Remember this: the bars that imprison us aren't always made of steel. Sometimes they're made of silence, fear, and accepting injustice. But when enough people stand up and say no more, those bars can break, and freedom, real freedom, begins.